Let's bring back in our political panel. Jonathan Kott and Maura Gillespie joins us now. Jonathan is a partner at Capitol Counsel and previously served as senior advisor to both Senators Chris Coons and Joe Manchin. Maura is the founder of Blue Stack Strategies and the former advisor to Speaker John Boehner and former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. And so, I know we left off our previous discussion kind of talking about next steps, but, how long do you think, Maura, this will take to resolve?
It could take some time. Patrick McHenry is currently Speaker pro temp, so they've got a little bit of time here to hopefully figure out where to go next with the conference, kind of bring them together. But it's going to be a tough sell, I think, we talked about before, to get Democrats to kind of resolve this issue, because clearly the Republicans are not going to be able to do it on their own.
Jonathan, how do you think the White House perceives this, particularly because we know, and we just heard from President Biden earlier this week, pushing lawmakers to act on Ukraine funding? I mean, that was supposed to be the next step after approving this funding to keep the government up and running for the next 45 days. How does that get done?
I think it's very unfortunate. I think the White House, was hoping that they could work in a bipartisan way, which they've done a lot of the times in the last 2 or 3 years. But, there's nobody to actually negotiate with at this point. I don't know if the Biden White House is going to see Patrick McHenry as somebody they can actually negotiate with, who can hold up the deals that they make with him. So it's unfortunate, mostly for the country, that we're at this point, because Republicans can't pass the appropriations bills they want. We're getting, closer and closer to another government shutdown, because all we did was kick the can down the road 45 days. We're going to run up on that real fast, and the trust has broken down in the House on the Republican side. So I don't even know how they get to 218 on pieces of legislation going forward. I think that's the bigger problem.
I know, Maura, as we explained, you are a former advisor to former House Speaker John Boehner. I mean, he faced the threat of removal at one point in time and actually stepped down. I know you've kind of been in touch with him. What kind of reaction are you hearing that you can share, if any?
He's, the speaker is not going to, former Speaker Boehner is not looking to weigh in on this issue. I think it's best that he leaves it to those who are currently, carrying the burden of our democracy and our government right now, who are in office. But I will say that, again, when he was faced with this in 2015, he had been thinking about retirement for some time. So he's in a different position. He was just 65, it was a different time for him. And he had checked the boxes he wanted to check, and he saw an opportunity to take a step back, set up, and work with the Democrats to get things done and clear the deck for incoming then Speaker Paul Ryan. So to me, obviously, I think of it in high regards of how he handled it. He bowed out gracefully because it was his time and when he felt was right to do. And this is a completely different situation that we're facing right now. There is serious rifts here. And again, what we talked about earlier.
Do you think this is more about McCarthy and the lack of trust in him, or is there a bigger issue with respect to the Republican Party?
There's a huge issue in the Republican Party as far as this big rift. I will say that what you're seeing in a large part of the party, especially in the House conference, is they are uniting around the buffoonery of Matt Gaetz. So that's a positive. I'm going to take that as a positive, that they are united and they think that Matt Gaetz is doing this simply to fundraise and to get attention and to get on TV, and that's what his goal is, because he doesn't have an actual plan. So that part is a positive. But for Republicans generally, this is a problem moving forward, because the American people are going to see this and see it as a failure to govern, and that's going to hurt them in the 24 election. So it's a real problem, a fundamental problem for Republicans to bounce back from and to kind of course correct.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, Scott, I mean, it seems to a certain extent that the former speaker is being punished for working across the aisle with Democrats, but at the end of the day, what does that say about the future of the institution if you can't work with the other side?
It's unfortunate, because I think what the American people want is for people to work across the aisle. That's how we get things done. We got some historic pieces of legislation passed because Democrats and Republicans were willing to work together. I think every poll you see, Americans feel that Washington is more divided, and they wish people were working across the aisle. Look, when the cameras go off, 80% of these members of Congress are friends. They'll talk to people. It's the politics that gets involved that makes it harder for them. And it's people like Matt Gaetz who throw these grenades in and have no plan on how to actually come out of it alive. There is no plan for him. He has no, speaker that he prefers or he thinks will work better. He was part of every other problem that he's now blaming Kevin McCarthy for. If his biggest problem with Kevin McCarthy is he worked with Democrats to keep the government open and funded and fund actual priorities that the American people want, I think that says a lot more about Matt Gaetz than it says about anything else. And I'll tell you, when your old boss announced that he was retiring, the first thing Senator Manchin did was run over there to thank him for everything that he had helped get done. And I think that's what people want more of, is members who are willing to work together. Adam Kinzinger is one of those people who's absolutely saying, we can work together, we can get things done. And I think that's what we need to see more of.
People want that. To John's point, people want that. I think they see the partisanship and this toxic fighting just to fight as frustrating. They're getting a little sick of it, and I don't blame them. I think that there are a lot of issues in Congress right now that are unfortunately on full display, and you don't get to see a lot of those relationships that are actually happening behind the scenes because people are just more interested in, again, what Matt Gaetz is doing, his shenanigans, and it's a shame.
I want to push you further. I mean, do you think ultimately this will cost Republicans at the polls next year?
I do. I think if they can't figure a way to govern and show the American people what, because when people are looking at issues, especially as we look into the next election, the economy is first and foremost. Second to that is probably safety and security. Those are two issues where Americans tend to trust Republicans to handle those two issues better than Democrats. What is this going to tell them if we can't get just simply governing? And again, to John's point, we can't even vote on a bill to stop the government from shutting down, and we're getting penalized for that. So it's going to be a real problem for Republicans to not only grapple with this, but a host of other issues going into 24.
Yeah, Maura, Gillespie, Jonathan Kott, thanks as always for being with us. I want to turn now to CBS News politics reporter Zak Hudak. And Zak, obviously, this is still continuing to unfold and develop, but what are you hearing in terms of reaction, both from Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill?
I am hearing outrage from McCarthy's allies and from the folks who wanted things to continue on as they have, particularly outrage aimed at Matt Gaetz and at the other generally far-right Republicans, with the exception of Nancy Mace, who voted to remove Kevin McCarthy. On the other hand, I am hearing some relief from Democrats who are excited to have a potential of a new speaker. There are a number of Democrats who view McCarthy as, at this point, a far-right MAGA Republican. Whether or not that's truly the case, they are excited for a fresh slate. They are looking at these last 9 months or so as wasted time in Congress, where they could have been getting things done, but where Speaker McCarthy was bowing to the extremes in his party. Whether or not it will be possible to get someone in who is able to make things go a little bit more smoothly is yet to be seen. And that's something that folks on both sides of the aisle are expressing concern about whether there is someone who can actually get elected as Speaker and can actually remain Speaker long enough to get some things done in this Congress.
I mean, if the former Speaker decides to run again, do you think he has a chance at this point?
I learned long ago not to ever fully count out Kevin McCarthy. He is extremely talented at making relationships and at having other members feel indebted to him and loyal to him. So I would not count him out. This is a guy who managed to get elected as Speaker over the course of 17 votes. He repeatedly failed, and there were a number of efforts to get someone else to step in. Anyone else who would have had a shot was too loyal to him to go against him to step in. So this is a major uphill battle. It seems unlikely that he would regain his speakership. But as I said, I would never count out Kevin McCarthy and his ability to make and maintain strong relationships on Capitol Hill.
I want to quickly play some sound that the former Speaker said. He obviously had an interview here on CBS News on Face the Nation on Sunday, which some Democrats say was a factor in their decision to oust the Speaker. Let's take a listen to what the former Speaker told our Margaret Brennan.
I wasn't sure it was going to pass. You want to know why? Because the Democrats tried to do everything they can not to let it pass. They did
Democrats were the ones who voted for this in a larger number than Republicans to keep the continuing resolution alive.
Did you watch the floor yesterday?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
90 Republicans voted against it.
Now, we learned earlier today that Democrats played that clip during their caucus meeting this morning. Why do you think that this may have been a factor in Democrats' decision not to back the speaker or the former speaker?
I think it reinforced the perception among many of them that he is, for lack of a better word, sort of a snake of a politician, someone who will make a deal and then publicly not say he made a deal and publicly bash you over the head. And I think Democrats sort of feel that way about Kevin McCarthy and the way that he has acted as Speaker so far.
All right. Well, Zak Hudak, appreciate you as always for weighing in.